A tense hush fell over the courtroom as Elise Morgan, a poised black woman in a crisp navy blue suit, stepped forward. At the prosecution's table, officers Mark Ridley and Dave Thompson exchanged smirking glances. Ridley leaned toward Thompson and muttered, "This will be a cakewalk. She doesn't stand a chance." Thompson, eyes alight with arrogance, replied, "I can't wait to see her squirm when we expose her for meddling." Their overconfidence hung in the air like a challenge. The morning sun streamed through the towering windows of the Marston County Courthouse, casting long shadows on the polished floors and amplifying the charged atmosphere. Reporters lined the walls with notepads and cameras, anticipating a sensational story. Local media had dismissed this as another routine case of alleged obstruction of a police investigation, but the palpable tension hinted at a deeper truth waiting to be revealed. Elise, in her 40s, with high cheekbones and eyes that burned with quiet determination, exuded an aura of unyielding self-assurance. "I didn't come here to be intimidated," she said softly as she took her seat at the defendant's table, her voice steady and clear. Beside her sat her trusted legal counsel, Gregory Holtz, a seasoned attorney with salt and pepper hair, and a discreet assistant who watched the proceedings with measured calm. There were no flashy limousines or media spectacles. Elise had arrived knowing exactly what was at stake. Across the room, the two officers maintained their smug demeanor. "It's always easy when they try to act tough," Ridley sneered as he crossed his arms, his tone dripping with disdain. Thompson added, "She's just a nuisance who got in our way," his words echoing his belief that this trial was merely a formality. Presiding over the trial was Judge Pamela Whitfield, her black robe and thin-framed glasses lending a solemn authority to the room. Glancing at the gathered crowd and the dossier before her, she declared, "Order in the court. Let us proceed with decorum." Her voice carried a weight that reminded everyone that the law would be upheld, no matter who stood before it. The prosecution's case was built on the claim that Elise had interfered with an ongoing police operation a few weeks prior, a story that had been widely circulated in the media. Assistant District Attorney Colleen Marshall took the floor next, her tone crisp and professional, yet edged with condescension. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, "you have been told that Ms. Morgan deliberately obstructed a legitimate police investigation. Her actions, we contend, not only impeded justice, but endangered the safety of our community." As she spoke, Ridley and Thompson nodded in silent agreement, their eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of anticipated victory. However, Gregory Holtz was quick to rise for the defense's opening statement. "Your Honor, esteemed members of the jury," he addressed the court with measured authority. "What you are about to see is not a tale of defiance, but one of injustice. The narrative presented by the prosecution is but a shadow of the truth. Officers Ridley and Thompson have employed unlawful methods and intimidation tactics to target Ms. Morgan, not because she interfered with an investigation, but because she dared to question their heavy-handed approach." He paused, locking eyes with several jurors. "Today, we will show that the truth is far more complex, and that those who abuse their power will one day face the consequences." Tension mounted further when the defense introduced crucial surveillance footage. The lights dimmed as grainy black and white images flickered onto the courtroom screens. The footage revealed a quiet afternoon in a modest Westbridge neighborhood. Elise was seen walking along the sidewalk after a community event, casually engaging with local residents. Notice how she asks, "Excuse me, is everything all right in the neighborhood?" Gregory pointed out, his voice resonating through the room. Then, the video captured a startling moment. Officers Ridley and Thompson approached Elise. Instead of the aggressive confrontation suggested by the prosecution, the video depicted a scene of confusion. Elise held out her palms defensively. "I was only trying to understand what was happening." Her voice was heard, calm yet questioning. Suddenly, the footage took a darker turn. Thompson abruptly produced a set of handcuffs and lunged forward. "That wasn't self-defense," Gregory argued sharply, pausing the video at the moment when a frail Lise was pinned against a police cruiser and Elise's hands were forcefully cuffed behind her back. The courtroom murmured in disbelief as the evidence contradicted the narrative that had been so confidently laid out by the prosecution. After the video, the defense called a key witness, Carmen Williams, a retired school teacher and longtime neighborhood watch volunteer. With a tremor in her voice but undeniable sincerity, Carmen recounted her account of that fateful day. "I saw her approach the officers," Carmen testified, her eyes glistening with conviction. "She was polite and respectful. Instead of a threat, all she did was ask, 'Why are there so many officers here today?' Then, without warning, they shoved her and cuffed her like a criminal." Her testimony was interspersed with the occasional exchange between the officers in the background, barely audible over the hum of the courtroom. When cross-examined by Assistant District Attorney Marshall, Carmen held her ground. "I've been part of this community for decades," she insisted firmly, "and I've never seen such unwarranted aggression. Their actions were fueled by bias, not concern for public safety." As Carmen concluded her testimony, whispers of dissent began to ripple through the courtroom. Ridley's earlier smirk faded, replaced by a flicker of discomfort, while Thompson shifted in his seat, his eyes narrowing in frustration. "You're twisting the facts," Thompson muttered under his breath to Ridley, but his tone lacked its usual bravado. Then came the moment that no one in the courtroom expected. Judge Whitfield's gavel banged decisively as she called the court back to order. "We will now proceed to closing arguments," she announced. Just then, an aide approached the bench with an urgent request, and within moments, a high-ranking federal official was escorted into the room. With a calm authority that silenced even the most skeptical murmurs, the official declared, "This trial is not just about the events of that day. I hereby announce that Ms. Elise Morgan is the newly appointed head of Homeland Security." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, with unyielding resolve, Elise stood and addressed the stunned assembly. "I did not seek this position for power or glory," she said firmly, her voice resonating with determination, "but to serve justice and protect the rights of all citizens. Today, you have witnessed a farce, a manipulation of truth by those who were meant to protect us. My ascension to this office is a clear message. No one, no matter how high their badge, is above accountability." Her words were punctuated by a steely glance directed at Ridley and Thompson, whose earlier arrogance had been stripped away in an instant. In the days that followed, the trial's outcome sent shockwaves through Westbridge. Investigations were launched into the conduct of Officers Ridley and Thompson, and the Westbridge Police Department was forced to confront long-standing allegations of misconduct and racial bias. Elise Morgan's historic stand had not only cleared her name, but had ignited a movement for systemic change. In interviews that followed, Elise was resolute. "Justice is not about protecting the powerful," she told a reporter. It's about ensuring that every person is treated with dignity and fairness. This is just the beginning. Meanwhile, in the courtroom, whispers of regret and disbelief echoed among those who had once cheered the prosecution. As one juror later remarked to a colleague, "I never imagined that a trial would turn into a lesson for those who thought they could trample on people without consequences." Even Carmen Williams, whose testimony had struck a chord with many, quietly noted, "It's a hard lesson, but sometimes truth is the only weapon we have against injustice." The legacy of that day became a turning point for Westbridge, a reminder that arrogance and prejudice, no matter how deeply entrenched, can be dismantled by the unwavering force of truth and accountability. And as the city began to heal from the wounds inflicted by biased policing, Elise Morgan's rise to power served as a beacon of hope, ensuring that those who once mocked her would now be the ones facing a reckoning far beyond the walls of any courtroom.